Good morning. I'm Dr. Nidhi Gupta, pediatric endocrinologist and digital wellness coach in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to Inspinar. During my training to become a pediatrician, I spent a significant amount of time in oncology units. Witnessing young children battling cancer was often disheartening, but my experienced colleagues would reassure me with a simple but seemingly profound truth. They would say, "It's okay. Kids are resilient. It will be okay." This made me wonder what exactly makes children more resilient than adults. 20 years later, I have a feeling I might finally learn about resilience. Jane, welcome to Inspinar.
Thank you, Nidhi. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, Jane. Tell us, where does your own connection with nature stem from?
Um, Great question. Nature. I often think nature is like my mother nature. It's the other big influence in my life. Um, in the 1970s, I grew up in the heart of the country in a little village in a national park called Exmoor. And in many ways, it was idyllic. It was a free range, feral childhood spent building dens, riding horses, playing in the river. It was, yeah, it was a pretty amazing childhood in some respects. Um, but it was also, our house was very busy. My parents ran a post office, a shop. We had lodgers in the house. They were sheep shearers. We had Vietnam vets in the house. We had a doctor's surgery that we ran from our dining room. So there were always people in our house. They used to put adders, snakes in their pockets for fun. That was the kind of environment it was. So for me, being out in nature was my safe place. It was my safe haven. Every day after school, I would ride my bike to the local farm, and I would, without the farmer knowing, I would ride the horse, and I would be out there, and I'd be picking berries um, and eating leaves and mushrooms and stuff before foraging was even a thing, which is sort of that innate intuition and knowledge, I guess, being passed down. So it was idyllic in some respects, but nature was definitely my safe place, my haven.
So, nature was your safe place, your haven. Did being in nature shape your resilience practice? Did your experience in life, other experiences in life, shape your resilience practice, Jane?
Yes, very much so. And I think of hard times in my life, it's been walking out in nature outside that has really um, been a sense of therapy, I think, for me. Um, if I needed to nut something out, I would go out into nature. And my own life, I think because there were lots of things in my life that I didn't have control over. I mean, all those people in the house, obviously, but my life was also affected. I mean, like a lot of people, you have hardships in life. Um, and that involved things like, adoption, abandonment, unhealthy emotional relationships, and later in life, things like death of my ex-husband and my son having a really life-changing accident at one point. So there were lots of times in my life that I didn't really have control, and I think nature was a way of just trying to make sense of everything. And I think there's a constant in nature. There is a cyclical nature about nature, being outside, a reassurance that if I miss something this season, I'll catch it next season. It's okay. And a sense of rhythm, and the fact that there is this innate sense that nature's got it. It's okay. You know, you look outside, you see the trees, and you have the seasons, and even, you know, dying trees, they nourish the other trees around them. So it was sort of yeah, it was just my way of making sense of a world that wasn't really in my control for a lot of the time.
Sounds like being in nature gave you a greater sense of control on your own life, and the lessons from nature, the cyclic nature of nature itself, gave you more peace. Are those some of the elements, Jane, that you bring into your coaching when you do nature-based and creativity-based coaching? How do you bring some of those elements in to help your clients?
Yeah, that's is a great question. I was with someone this morning and we were planning some nature-based workshops together. And I've run a few courses over the last sort of few months where similarly the environment has really changed the nature of the conversations that we've had. And we know that being in nature, it has a calming effect. It can boost our memory, our concentration, our sense of problem solving. It can reduce our heart rate. It can reduce our blood sugars. So there's this very sort of silent thing that goes on when we're outside, that doesn't happen inside. And even to the point where I'll ask somebody or a group of people to describe maybe some of their emotions, and they'll struggle, but you ask them to forage for something outside or pick up some natural objects. And then I'll ask them to think about maybe a difficult conversation or a sort of more appreciative a conversation. And they'll pick up something like a prickly teasel or something like that, or a razor sharp clamshell. And they'll instantly identify it and be able to talk about those emotions. And similarly, something like a flower or an apple that will be blossoming and fruitful. So, yeah, there's this innate sort of knowledge and connection that people have, which we can remove ourselves from in the modern world, I guess. And then there's also this element of what we call soft fascination, where in our modern world, we've got our computers and our screens and everything's very sort of hard edged. But in nature, we have that in a similar way, but the edges are much softer. So it's still retaining our attention, but it's in a much gentler way, which helps to reset our minds and just to calm our busy, busy brains.
Picking up different elements of nature can help guide difficult conversations.
Yeah, it's been quite profound, the sense of connection that people feel and being able to express themselves in a way that they're not able to do without that natural element. Yeah.
It's Jane, you've had a significant shift in how your life was growing up in the 1970s to how life in general is now in the 21st century. Over the course of this time, I sometimes wonder what happened that we have come so far away from nature. Why do we have to be so much more intentional about going back into nature when in the past it was very natural to be in nature and to be surrounded by nature? How has humanity come to this difficult position where we have to plan nature hangouts?
Yeah, planning nature hangouts, carving out time that we would have normally done, as part of our lives. I think the more we've removed ourselves from nature, the less we've connected with ourselves. one of the courses I ran was around, it was called Reconnect, reconnecting with ourselves, reconnecting with each other, and reconnecting with nature. And just, I think I've been influenced quite recently by reading and finishing Women Who Run with the Wolves, and just this innate sense of who we are and the knowledge that we have, which is just so intuitive. And there's something also very sensory about being outside. We only have to sort of smell something, the earth itself, or we smell the plants and the flowers. It might be that we feel the ruffle of the wind in our hair, or we're at the sea and we can feel the sand between our toes. Being outside is such a sensory experience, and it helps us to be in the moment. And when there is so much in this world that's out of our control and so much that's uncertain, when we're really in that sensory place and we're really connecting with nature, we're really connecting with ourselves as well. And we're grounding ourselves so that we're not thinking about the future and we're not thinking about the past. So I think that's one of the big benefits of being outside.
Reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with ourselves, reconnecting with other humans grounds us. And it's almost like sensory therapy. And it's also building the superpower of resilience. Why is resilience so important in this crazy, uncertain world, Jane?
I think that some of the points we've talked about, that there is so much uncertainty in our world, and we have access to all of that uncertainty through our phones and through our IT, etc., in a way that we didn't have before. So we're getting all of this news and all of this information as it happens, and this sort of consciousness of other people's suffering that we may not detect on a conscious level, but subconsciously we're picking up on things that are happening in different parts of the world. And obviously we have different conflicts going on, and generally we have this collective consciousness that we can feel. So resilience in that sense is a way of being able to navigate these ups and downs. And I know sometimes resilience can be referred to this as this bouncing back. And I think you referred to children in oncology. And I'm not a big fan of the bouncing back, I must admit. Um, I've recently given some workshops on resilience, and some of the I think one of the quotes I give is Darwin's quote, that it's not about survival of the fittest or the strongest, it's about survival of the most adaptable. And resilience is about being adaptable, and it's adapting to our environment, it's adapting to ourselves. And it's knowing when to rest and be gentle and kind and compassionate to ourselves, and knowing when to push on. And I love the fact that nature has provided us with these beautiful units of time, which we call days. And so the sun comes up, we have the day, and the sun goes down. And whatever that day looks like, part of resilience practice is having the hope and the optimism that the next day will be different. And then also thinking about the people that we have around us. That's part of our resilience practice as well, about deliberately cultivating the people that are going to lift us up and give us energy and who make us feel good. So having a little social network around us is also part of that resilience practice. And then things around, or the concept of emotional positivity, without it being toxic positivity, but being able to recognize when we're feeling maybe a bit down, and what can we do to maybe change our mood. And that might be something around physical activity, or it might be getting out into nature, but just recognizing that our brains are not always as reliable as we want them to be, because they'll always go to the negative, because that's our survival instinct. So how do we just shift that dial a little bit with some of that more positive emotional thinking, because that's also beneficial for our immune system as well.
Resilience is about being more adaptable. Resilience is about hoping that the next day would be different from the current day. Resilience is about inculcating a degree of positive emotional intelligence into our day-to-day interactions. Jane, how did you navigate the twists and turns in your own life and in your career? And how did these resilience practices and mindset help you get through all of that?
There's another resilience practice which I haven't really mentioned, which is around reframing. And I think that's probably a lot of the people that I know who have been through quite a lot of difficult university in their lives have cultivated this reframing. So I think that's been a big part of how I dealt with some of those situations that I couldn't change. I left school at 16. I left home at 16. And I think that's the other element. It's having choice as well, and being able to make choices for yourself and decisions for yourself. I went to secretarial school. I went to into a state agency, and around the time that I was 18, I wondered about going to art college. And I also applied at the same time to the Foreign Office because I had this fanciful idea that I wanted to be the next Jane Bond. Um, so I had this interview, and miraculously, I got the job, and it was with the Foreign Office, which is, I guess, now at MI6. Um, but I, it's interesting because I look back now, but I turned it down, and I wonder if there was an element of self-sabotaging going on there. But I went back to a state agency, which seemed like the right decision to make. I often wonder, gosh, I wonder if I could have been, Jane Bond now. But I do think these are some of the sliding doors moments that we all have in our lives. And somehow I was in recruitment for some time, which I loved because it was very busy, very fast moving. I then went on to go into pharmaceutical sales for 24 years. It just seemed to the time just sort of went by. And I spent 12 of those years in oncology, which was an area that I really loved. It was fast moving, it was dynamic, and it obviously had a real sense of purpose in making a difference to people. So, how I navigated that was, I think you know when you're in the right job, and you also know when you're not in the right job. And there's something about going back to Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's a chapter on the little match girl, and if anyone knows the sort of fable of the story, the little match girl dies in the end. And the point being, she could have moved to a different environment. And I think that's the same for many of us. It was certainly the same for me, that I could have changed my environment. I could have gone somewhere that was maybe more suited to uh, my enthusiasms and my skill set, but I didn't. So COVID happened. I took early retirement, and I wanted to coach, and I'd already started coaching at that time. And I think it's about this change, that this fascination for transformational change, which resilience is a very big part of, that really drew me to that.
What part of coaching do you absolutely love, Jane? And what part do you wish you did not have to deal with?
I've been very privileged to coach people who have the uncertainty of their future in a world of oncology and a cancer diagnosis. And many of the people I've coached have stage 4 lung cancer, which isn't curable. And the courage that those people have shown, and the grace never fails to imprint on me. What I love is when I see people making choices and changes for themselves. I think also realizing what amazing human beings they are, because I think sometimes we forget that. And that's part of the coaching role, that we're there to walk that path with that person, and to encourage them to question, to listen. And listening is a huge part of that. Many people want to be listened and heard. And to mirror back. Sometimes, that mirroring can be the real, or lead to the real aha moments. It's sort of, oh gosh, did I really say that? Is that what I really meant? And challenging people maybe to step out of their comfort zone. And it might be around putting boundaries down and setting boundaries, which maybe they're not used to doing, or maybe they're having different kinds of conversations with themselves as well, in terms of self-compassion and cultivating a practice of self-compassion. So when I see people making those changes, that's really fulfilling. And whether it's people with ADHD or whether it's people with cancer, I think so much is demanded of them, that sense of identity is helping people connect back to who they really are. And I love the work of Bronnie Ware, who was a palliative care nurse in Australia, and she wrote a book. She worked with a lot of people at the end of their lives, and she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And this is one of my mantras, really. It's around, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not to the expectations of others. So a lot of my coaching is based around that, about being your true, authentic self and being able to express yourself to your greatest, talent and ability and potential. And so I think that's what drives me, making a difference.
Listening, reflecting, and mirroring back are the essential components of coaching. And go ahead, Jane, repeat that sentence that you just said, living life by my own, the mantra from that book.
I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not to the expectations of others.
I wish I had the courage to live life true to myself and not to the expectations of others. So deep and so profound. If only we start living like this, we might make the earth a better place.
We might. The world without judgment, without guilt, a place where people can laugh and be themselves, express themselves and their creative, most soul-nourishing selves.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you for sharing your work, your life, and the practices of resilience with us on Inspinar. It was a joy to have you today.
Thank you very much, Nidhi. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's reconnect with the real world. Let's reconnect with what truly matters. Let's reclaim our health, joy, and efficiency. Let's ungrip devices and grip life. I will see you next time.